My name is John Sarbanes. I am the founder and CEO of GrassrootsDonor.com, which is a small startup we launched here in Baltimore a couple of years ago to fight back against the influence and dominance of big money in our politics, to try to show that there's a different way that we can raise money for congressional campaigns. I also happen to be a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. I was elected in 2006 to represent the 3rd District here in Maryland. And through that perspective, I've gotten an inside view of the influence of big money on our politics. So what I wanted to do today was talk to you from 2 different perspectives, wearing 2 different hats about this topic. The first is as a member of Congress. The other is as a citizen, somebody who leaves Washington every single day and drives back home to Baltimore and then looks back on Washington and wonders why we can't fix this broken system. So let me start out as a member of the House of Representatives, a member of Congress, and explain to you what it means to deal with this huge money-drenched culture in Washington, D.C. that is underwritten by special interests and big money. For starters, the average member of Congress now, in order to be elected, has to raise every 2 years $1.5 million. And the only way you can do that in our current system is you go to big moneyed interests to raise that cash. And you spend an inordinate amount of your time doing it. There's a statistic, a guy named Larry Lessig wrote a book recently called Republic Lost, and he did a lot of interviews of members of Congress and concluded that the average member of Congress now spends 30 to 70% of their time raising money, which means you think you're electing professional legislators, but you're really electing professional fundraisers who spend most of their time going to fundraising parties or on the phone making cold calls to people they'll never meet and asking for money. The result is we don't have the time to do 2 things which are absolutely critical if you're going to get things accomplished in Washington. The first is to build relationships with your colleagues, which is fundamental in a legislative arena. You don't have time to do it because you got to go make the fundraising calls. So you don't build that trust, and it makes it harder to reach compromise on important legislation and public policy. The second thing that suffers is you don't have as much time to read the material, to study the issues, to understand what your constituents want and understand how you shape legislation to make a difference, because you're fundraising all the time. And the result of this is it gets harder and harder to make good, sound public policy in Washington, and the average person out there knows that they're getting frustrated by it. So that's the perspective of a member of Congress in terms of what this money is doing. But there's something else that's happened recently. With the advent of these super PACs that are now coming in and throwing tons of money into congressional races at the presidential level and the Senate and so forth, a lot of my colleagues are walking around all the day sort of anxious, fearful that some super PAC's going to come in and level them. I refer to these super PACs as money drones, because you're just walking down the street, you're a candidate walking down the street or a member of Congress, and you hear a humming behind you. And next thing you know, they've dropped a $500,000 payload on you, and you're obliterated. You're off the political stage. And the thing is, you don't even know who's operating that drone, because there's no transparency and there's no disclosure. We don't know where the money's coming from. That's the new state of our democracy. So that's the frustration I feel as a member of Congress when I look at the influence of big money on our politics. But let me take that hat off now and put your hat on, because it's the hat I wear when I get home every day. As an ordinary citizen who's frustrated, who's cynical, who doesn't believe anymore that your voice can make a difference. Because what's a $10 or $15 or $25 contribution to the candidate of your choice? How's that going to make a difference? How will your voice be heard when Sheldon Adelson can drop $30 million into a super PAC? And so you start to wonder, Does it make a difference anymore? Can my voice be heard in our politics, in this kind of a democracy? And most people are concluding that the answer to that is no. So that's a frustration that people feel, but there's something else that they feel. They feel in their gut that their democracy doesn't belong to them anymore. The government has been taken over by these special interests. Some people will tell you, well, government's bought and sold. Now, I don't think it's bought and sold. I don't think members of Congress sell their votes, and I don't think special interests buy their votes. But when an institution like Congress becomes as dependent on big money from special interests as it has become, it's inevitable, it's human nature that when it comes time to make public policy, that institution is going to lean in the direction of those special interests and away from the public interest. And that matters. That makes a difference. And you may say, well, what's the value proposition in this for me? Does it really matter? Does it matter that the special interests write the bills? Does it really affect me? Well, if you're drinking from a plastic cup right now, or if your child, when you go home tonight, has got a plastic toy in their mouth, think about the fact that those are all made by chemicals. And we don't know a lot about some of these chemicals. I wish we knew more, but there's an industry that doesn't necessarily want to produce that information. And I'm picking on that industry now, but I could pick on many industries. And the way they fight back against it is they know how to make these campaign contributions. So it matters if there's a dependency on the big money and the special interests in terms of what you experience in your democracy. So what are we going to do about it? Well, that's what this is, the Grassroots Democracy Act. I decided last fall, and I've reintroduced it, that we got to take a shot at changing the system, at promoting citizen-owned, grassroots-funded, people-powered campaigns so that people like myself and other members of Congress will rely for the funding of their campaigns on ordinary people who don't ask for special favors but just want you to go do the right thing. So there's three components to this. Your eyes don't need to glaze over. This is not complicated. There's three components to the Grassroots Democracy Act. The first is that every American will be entitled to a $50 refundable tax credit for contributions that they make to congressional campaigns. So now it's easier for you to participate because we have to broaden the participation from the grassroots if we're going to make a difference, because that's where we need to rely on people to fund our campaigns. So we've got this $50 tax credit that says step up, be part of the solution. The next thing we do is we say if the candidate that you support is a true grassroots candidate, that means they don't take PAC money and they build a grassroots network out there. If they're truly grassroots, then the donation you make to them will multiply 5 to 1 or 10 to 1 from a public fund to boost your voice, to amplify the power of your participation in the democracy. And the third component is we say if the candidate you supported, that grassroots candidate, is suddenly faced with an onslaught of outside money, super PAC money, then we're going to give them the opportunity to go to the People's Fund. Think of it as America's super PAC and get some additional dollars so they can stay in the game. So it's a tax credit, it's multiplying the power of your contribution, and then it's some protection for that grassroots candidate if some outside group wants to come and take them out. It's that simple. And we can do this. It's not going to be easy, but it's your decision. Somebody's going to own the government. It'll either be owned by big money and special interests, in which case the institution of Congress and others will lean in their direction, or it'll be owned by you because you lift the funding of campaigns up on your shoulders. If you want to help us with this, if you want to participate in this movement to try to promote citizen-owned, grassroots-funded, people-powered campaigns, what you can do is go to grassrootsdemocracyact.org or grassrootsdonor.com. If you want to jump into the Twitterverse discussion of this, use the hashtag GRDAct. Our Twitter handle is @GrassrootsDonor. We've got a petition that we're asking people to sign. If you do that, you will ensure that our politics, our government, our democracy is no longer of, by, and for the money, but is of, by, and for the many. Thank you all very much.